today in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, a private not-for-profit organization. As always, please feel free to contact us with your comments, suggestions, and questions you may have. And please stay with us. The Reading Buffalo News is coming up next.
The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org. And hello, your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for another Victory Monday, March 9th. And your readers today are
Ted Pajacki.
And I'm Ed Howard, and we're going to start with the weather. And the weather today is sunny, becoming windier and warmer today with a high of 62. Mainly clear tonight, low of 46. Warm tomorrow with some sun, then turning cloudy, a couple of afternoon showers, and maybe even a thunderstorm, high 57. Wednesday, it'll be breezy with periods of rain and again a thunderstorm. Our high and low temperature for this time period is normally 39 and 24 degrees. Our record high temperature was 66, set back in 2024, and our record low temperature was -7, set in 1984. Our precipitation for year-to-date is about 5.5 inches, and we are about an inch below the typical average of 6.6 inches year-to-date. And our air quality today is said to be good. So, Ted, that's the weather. What do we have in the news?
Well, we've got an interesting front page. It says, taxes, snow, and pricey homes? What's behind New York's population slump and how to fix it? So we don't have the snow right now, so move to New York, people.
We have taxes.
Well, that's true, too. Some subscribe to Kevin Adams' school of thought when trying to answer why New York's population has flatlined in recent years. We don't have palm trees. We have taxes in New York, and these are things you deal with, the then Buffalo Sabres general manager said in 2024 to explain the team's failure to attract high-level free agents. 1 year later, Adams was no longer dealing with free agents, but the weather and the taxes remain, and they come up whenever anyone talks about why New York isn't growing like other parts of the country. New York gained 1,008 residents in the year ending in July, but its population is still down by 120,000 since July 2020, according to the latest census estimates. Only California has lost more of its population, and just 4 other states lost a larger share of their population during this period. Observers point to a high cost of living, an unfriendly business climate, and a lack of affordable housing as reasons for New York's population slump. There's just so much building going on, new neighborhoods popping up everywhere, new businesses popping up everywhere. A lot of major companies are relocating to Florida, and I feel like the future for Florida looks just a lot brighter, no pun intended, said Matt Braun, who was involved in the Republican Party politics in the town of Tonawanda before his 2024 move to Central Florida. Republicans excoriate the Democrats who run state government and most of New York's major cities for policies that drive people and businesses away. But Democrats say affordability is an issue everywhere, and the decision on where to live is a personal one rooted in many factors. I don't think you can necessarily point the blame at any one decision or individual coming out of state government, Erie County Executive Mark Poloncarz said. Developers say it's too hard to build new housing in New York because of onerous zoning restrictions and environmental review rules. And business leaders and taxpayers say much more needs to be done to rein in spending at state and local government levels. When you talk about competitiveness, you need to have jobs and the right opportunities for talented people to want to live in your region, said Dottie Gallagher, the president and CEO of Buffalo Niagara Partnership, the business group. You've got to have good quality of life and affordability, and all of that relates to taxes, and for businesses, taxes and regulations. How much do our winters matter when people are choosing where to live? Buffalo Niagara doesn't have hurricanes, forest fires, major earthquakes, mudslides, or severe flooding to contend with. But it's hard to overcome our well-deserved reputation for heavy snow and fierce cold. The sunshine and breathtaking scenery are among the reasons that Tricia Costantino hasn't thought about returning here after nearly 3 decades in Southern California. Costantino, who's 50, graduated from Kenmore West High School and SUNY Geneseo. She moved to California because it was a lot easier to get a teaching job there in the late 1990s. She lives in a townhouse in Pacific Palisades that survived the recent devastating wildfires, though her office was destroyed. Even that isn't enough to convince her to move. "I'm never leaving," said Costantino, who runs an academic enrichment center and roller skates outdoors year-round. "I found exactly where I need to be." Some states that have seen their populations surge in recent decades, such as Texas and Florida, which boost the largest post-pandemic growth, have warm weather and no state income tax. The conservative-leaning Tax Foundation rates New York 50th on its 2026 State Tax Competitive Index. Particularly if you're a retiree, you move to Florida, and you're paying a lot less in taxes, and you're not looking out the window in March and there's still giant piles of snow in the parking lot, right? Said Sean Donahue, a University at Buffalo clinical assistant professor of political science. Braun, who turned 31 on Sunday, was a lifelong Tonawanda resident before moving to Mount Dora, Florida, which is outside Orlando, in 2024. The former Tonawanda Republican chair was cybersecurity risk manager for Kaleida Health. Now he's a consultant, and his fiancée Mary, who's now his wife, swiftly found work as a registered nurse. He said he enjoys year-round golf, running into fellow expats, and a lower tax burden. "I had a 936 square foot ranch in the town of Tonawanda, and I pay just about the same amount of property taxes in Florida for my home, which is 2,700 square foot home," Brown said.
Well, while we're on the subject of taxes, again from the front page of today's Buffalo News, with budget season ramping up, Buffalo officials warn that tax increases are coming. Last month, Mayor Sean Ryan got some welcome news when Governor Kathy Hochul included $40 million for the city to help dig out of its deep fiscal hole in her ongoing budget negotiations with the state legislature. Ryan, who served in the legislature for 14 years before being elected Buffalo's mayor, had been working to secure extra state money since shortly after he won the Democratic primary in June, knowing that if he became mayor, he would need all the help he could get to bring the city's books into balance. With so many moving parts to the city's budget process before Ryan's budget proposal is due April 15th, the next month will be full of shifting calculations as the administration gets a better handle on how to increase revenue and how quickly those efforts will produce positive results. "It's an exercise of a tightrope to figure out," Ryan said. Even with that additional state money, city taxpayers are likely looking at a double-digit tax hike. The number that has been making the rounds in City Hall is a 15% bump in the tax levy this year, with significant increases for at least 2 years after that, though Ryan and officials from his administration have not committed to any number. Deputy Mayor Benjamin Swanekamp told the Buffalo News last week that their calculations are based on projections and many different figures could change by the time they present the budget in mid-April. Swanekamp said that they have yet to receive departmental budget requests and are working with estimates based on previous budgets that could change significantly. We've not settled on a final figure yet, Swanekamp said. However, Ryan has repeatedly acknowledged, both in his campaign and since taking office, that significant hikes over several years are inevitable. The bulk of the state money, which still needs to be the approval of the legislature, will go towards closing the books on this fiscal year, with $30 million already earmarked for covering the projected end-of-year deficit. City officials said more aggressive efforts to collect on back taxes, fines, and fees could also help bridge this year's gap and boost revenues in the next budget. Let's just see where other revenues are going to land, especially given some of our efforts into those collections, some prior year receivables, and things like that will all play a role in what the final request is, Swanekamp said. The city is also pushing for another approval from the state legislature that would allow it to borrow hundreds of millions of dollars through the Buffalo Fiscal Stability Authority in the coming years, which would offer a backup plan to close the books this year if any of the uncertain revenues fail to materialize. We're trying to get the state's permission to allow the control board to do deficit financing, Ryan said, so we need an influx of money, whether the one shot from a parking ramp or the deficit bond. Already, with more than a month to the April 15th deadline for the Ryan administration to present its budget to the council, some city lawmakers are expressing concern about the steep increases likely to come in the next few years. University District Council member Rashid Wyatt said he understands that the Ryan administration is in a bind, but he wants to see more searching for savings in personnel and other areas, especially among the highest paid city employees. With other city fees going up and cuts to federal programs like SNAP benefits, Wyatt said his poorest constituents are already getting hit on all sides. Council Majority Leader Leah Halton Pope has raised the prospect of a change in the city tax code that would protect homeowners on fixed incomes. She has also considered a millionaire's tax, such has been explored in New York City and elsewhere, an additional tax on the city's highest income brackets, and she has asked the administration to look into making monthly billing available on taxes and user fees to give residents an additional tool for managing their finances. We just have to protect the vulnerable, Halton Pope said. So my concern is, how do we protect our low-income and generational homeowners in a fair and equitable way? Fillmore District Council member Mitchell Nowakowski, who chairs the council's Finance Committee, said he has worked to prepare residents for the increases, but he is particularly worried about driving up housing costs for renters who have already seen dramatic increases in rent in recent years. In a city with almost half renters, we know that renters are going to eat that increase from their landlords, Nowakowski said. Over his nearly 2 decades in office, former Mayor Byron Brown rarely raised taxes, but his budgets often included revenues that fell short of projections and expenses that were underestimated, consistently resulting in end-of-the-year deficits the city plugged with reserve cash. By the time he left office, those funds were nearly gone, with more than $100 million in reserve funds spent on deficits during his tenure. As a result, City of Buffalo taxpayers enjoy the lowest property taxes of any municipality in Erie County by a significant measure.
You are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier radio reading service, and the time is 14 minutes after the hour. And now we move on to the opinion section of the news, and we start with our editorial by the staff of the Buffalo News, and its headline is On the Right Path. And the subtitle is University at Buffalo is using shrewd strategies to meet its energy goals. Smart thinkers at the University of Buffalo are figuring out how to have their AI and make it sustainable too. Along with its well-known energy demands, supercomputing brings with it equally substantial cooling requirements. But rather than straining the resources of the North Campus's infrastructure for its cooling needs, UB's Supercomputing Center, which is the hub of New York State's Empire AI Consortium, will use the heat generated by the computers to help power a campus-wide geothermal heating system. As reported by the News' Mackenzie Schumann, that is not all it will take to get UB to carbon neutrality over the next couple of decades, but it's a particularly innovative part of the university's strategy. UB has always been ahead of the curve when it comes to reducing energy use. So far back as 20 years ago, when the late Walter Simpson was UB's energy officer, a position he created, the university was building photovoltaic solar arrays. By 2022, UB was one of the largest on-campus producers of renewable energy in the country and has consistently ranked among the top 20 colleges and universities in the U.S. for sustainability year after year. UB presents a model of striving for sustainability that many governments would do well to replicate. Still, as the university continues to grow and its infrastructure ages, energy needs increase and carbon neutrality becomes more of a reach. The North Campus alone has 130 buildings with an annual energy cost of more than $16.6 million. About 35% of the energy used on the campus comes from natural gas, with its accompanying greenhouse gas emissions. The goal has been to get those emissions down to net zero by 2030, but now that projection is between 2029 and 2045. To make sure this gets done, a 25-year, $1 billion clean energy master plan for the North Campus has been created with the help of Wendel Companies. It's a big chunk of money, but will cost more to do nothing, especially since half of the allocation will be spent on efficiency upgrades that go under the heading of required maintenance. First, the Thermal Energy Network will be created in collaboration with the New York Power Authority. That authority, hydropower, is already providing 15 megawatts of energy that's needed to power UB's supercomputing center. Geothermal wells that tap into the heat of the earth will also be used to decarbonize UB's HVAC system. That system has long-needed crucial upgrades, Ryan McPherson, UB's Chief Sustainability Officer, explained, including improving airflow in the labs and optimizing HVAC controls. In a report from the UB News Center, Laura Hubbard, UB's Vice President for Finance and Administration, stated, "We have to acknowledge that the cost of doing nothing is not zero. Much of our heating and cooling infrastructure on the North Campus is roughly 60 years old, and it's approaching the end of its useful life." The entirety of this decarbonization process, with all of its components, is expected to decrease UB's energy use by 30%, as well as neutralize its carbon output. New York State has supported UB's North Campus sustainability efforts to the tune of $62 million. Decarbonizing the South Campus, which received $6 million from the state, is also part of the plan. Universities across the U.S. have made sustainability their priority. Elsewhere in New York State, Colgate University achieved net zero in 2019, and Hobart and William Smith achieved carbon neutrality in 2024. These are both much smaller institutions, but UB still needs to follow their example. UB trains its students in sustainable technologies, and UB scientists research the energy strategies of the future. The university rightly understands it must practice what it teaches.
Staying on the editorial page, next we have the Another Voice column, and the topic today is essential workers. The headline is Direct Support Professionals Deserve a Raise, and the writers are Mindy Cervoni, who is President and CEO of Community Services for Everyone, and Jeff Patterson, who is President and CEO of SASE. They write, when lake effect snow buries our streets, schools close, and travel bans are issued, most of Buffalo hunkers down and waits out the storm. Direct support professionals don't have that luxury. They report for duty in whiteout conditions, navigate unplowed roads, and cannot get home for days at a time. They stay to ensure that people with intellectual and developmental disabilities are safe, fed, and administered medication without interruption. For the thousands of Western New Yorkers with disabilities, support is not optional and isn't confined to a 9-to-5 schedule. It's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. On holidays, during blizzards, and in other emergencies, medication schedules cannot be delayed because of snow. Essential equipment has to be monitored, and daily routines that provide stability and dignity must continue. Direct support professionals are Buffalo's hidden essential workforce. They show up quietly and consistently, rarely seeking recognition. But dedication does not pay the bills. As nonprofit leaders and board members of the Developmental Disabilities Alliance of Western New York and New York Disability Advocates, we see the strain on this workforce every day. Inflation continues to erode already thin margins. NYDA internal survey data show provider costs have increased by double digits year over year for utilities, insurance, food, and other expenses. Yet, state reimbursement rates have not kept pace, leaving nonprofits to absorb costs while trying to maintain competitive wages. A recent report from the state comptroller found that child care costs in New York State are the second highest in the nation, rising nearly 18% in recent years. Direct support professionals work nights, weekends, holidays, and extended shifts during emergencies. During severe weather, many must secure last-minute child care at premium rates just to remain on the job. The governor's proposal to expand the child and dependent care credit in this year's budget would offer meaningful relief to these workers, including a 2.7 targeted inflationary increase in the final state budget is essential to pay the bills and keep the staff. Without it, providers cannot sustain services or offer wages that reflect the skill and commitment this work demands.
Today's editorial cartoon is rather simple. It's presented to us by Mike Lukovich of the Creators Syndicate, and it simply has two elephants talking to each other, and the elephants are decorated in the red, white, and blue with the white stars of the Republican Party, their logo. And the one elephant or Republican says to the other, "Enough's enough. This year, I'm voting Democrat." And that's that.
We'll turn now to the opinion columns, and the first one comes from Parmi Olson, and she writes for the Bloomberg Opinion Syndicate, and her headline is, Claude AI helped bomb Iran. But how exactly did it do so? She writes, the same artificial intelligence model that can help you draft a marketing email or a quick dinner recipe has also been used to attack Iran. The U.S. Central Command used Anthropic's Claude AI for intelligence assessments, target identification, and simulating battle scenarios during the strikes on the country, according to a report in the Wall Street Journal. Hours earlier, President Trump had ordered federal agencies to stop using Claude after a dispute with its maker, but the tool was so deeply baked into the Pentagon systems that it would take months to untangle in favor of a more compliant rival. It was used, too, in the January operation that led to the capture of Nicolas Maduro. But what does intelligence assessment and target identification mean in practice? Was Claude flagging locations to strike or making casualty estimates? Nobody has made that disclosure, and alarmingly, no one has an obligation to. Artificial intelligence has long been used in warfare for things like analyzing satellite imagery, detecting cyber threats, and guiding missile defense systems. But the use of chatbots is now being used on the battlefield. Last November, Anthropic partnered with Palantir Technologies, a data and analytics company that does a lot of work for the Pentagon, turning its large language model Claude into the reasoning engine inside a decision support system for the military. Then, in January, Anthropic submitted a $100 million proposal to the Pentagon to develop voice-controlled autonomous drone swarming technology. Bloomberg News reported the company's pitch used Claude to translate a commander's intent into digital instructions to coordinate a fleet of drones. Its bid was rejected, but the contest called for much more than just summarizing intelligence reports. This contract was to develop, quote, target-related awareness and sharing and launch determination, close quote, for potentially lethal drone swarms. Remarkably, all of this has been happening in a regulatory vacuum and with technology that is known to make errors. Hallucinations by large language models are the result of their training. Some scientists say the persistent challenge of AI confabulation may never be fixed. This would not be the first time unreliable AI systems have been used in warfare. Lavender was an AI-driven database used to help identify military targets associated with Hamas in Gaza. It was not a large language model, but analyzed vast amounts of surveillance data, such as social connections and location history, to assign each individual a score from 1 to 100. When someone's score passed a certain threshold, Lavender flagged them as a military target. The problem was that Lavender was wrong 10% of the time, according to an investigative report published by the Israeli-Palestinian outlet Plus 972. In an ideal world, governments like the U.S. would disclose how these systems are used on the battlefield. The goal wouldn't be to disclose exactly how Claude was used in something like Operation Epic Fury, but to release the broad contours, and especially to disclose when something goes wrong. The current public debate about the Anthropic-Pentagon feud about what is legal and ethical for AI when it comes to mass surveillance of Americans or creating fully autonomous weapons is missing the bigger question about the lack of visibility of how the technology is already being used in war. With such new and untested systems prone to making mistakes, this is sorely needed. Pushing for that transparency is critical before AI in warfare becomes so routine that nobody thinks to ask any more. Otherwise, we may find ourselves waiting for a catastrophic mistake and imposing transparency only after the damage is done.
You are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier radio reading service, and the time is 29 minutes after the hour. And our next opinion piece comes to us from Allison Schrager, who's also from the Bloomberg Opinion Group. And the headline is free trade worth the cost in lives lost in factory towns? There's something about manufacturing jobs in the manufacturing industry that makes people sentimental. When they think of a factory worker, they think of him, and it's usually a he, as having great benefits, job stability, and the ability to support his family. Donald Trump was elected president partly because of his promise, which he is finding hard to fulfill, to bring back manufacturing. We economists are not a sentimental bunch. Jobs are jobs so long as they pay well. But a new paper has me recalibrating my estimate of just how important manufacturing jobs can be and how to respond when they disappear. The paper finds more deaths in communities most impacted by NAFTA and trade with China. Americans who lived in a commuting zone with average exposure to Mexican import competition had a higher mortality rate by 0.68% overall, or 41.8 more deaths per 100,000 residents in the most vulnerable group on an annual age-adjusted basis. A big cause of death was infectious diseases, and deaths were particularly high for men aged 25 to 44. And it's notable that when there is no job loss for other reasons, such as recession, mortality rates tend to decrease. That suggests a reason that both Republicans and Democrats are so fixated on bringing manufacturing back. Job loss in these industries is especially devastating. But even if the economy as a whole ends up better off, even if new and better paid jobs were created in other towns and cities, they can't make up for the lost years of life. The economists who wrote the paper on NAFTA don't offer many answers about what makes manufacturing job so catastrophic. Communities grew up around factories, and when they closed, new jobs did not emerge, or if they did, they were far away or demanded skills the manufacturing workers did not have. When you lose a job because of a big structural change in the economy, and that change also ravages your community, your prospects are grim. The paper looks at job loss related to NAFTA because it was a single shock that increased trade. But technology also destroyed manufacturing jobs as many tasks became mechanized. It could be trade is different because the impact of NAFTA was more sudden. Mechanization happens more slowly, allowing people more time to adjust and retrain. A technology shock might also be different because the factory is still in operation and potentially more profitable. Or it could be that job loss from technology also increased mortality, but it's just harder to isolate it in the data. In either case, what happened to manufacturing employment offers an important warning. When agricultural jobs disappeared during the Industrial Revolution in the 19th century, so did a way of life, as well as many communities. It is unclear if it also led to earlier deaths, but it certainly caused lots of disruption and populism. AI is raising similar concerns today because there is a possibility of entire industries being transformed and more widespread job loss, this time for white-collar workers. Like NAFTA, the change is happening fast as AI is being adopted with remarkable speed. I believe that the new jobs and many of the economic benefits will be a net positive, but this research on manufacturing jobs underlines the need to take human costs more seriously. Fortunately, we are in a better position to help. America is far richer nation now than it was 150 years ago. None of this is to say that increased trade was a mistake 30 years ago or that tariffs are good policy today. Economies are constantly changing, and no matter how much or how little we trade, there will be fewer manufacturing jobs in the U.S. Delaying this process also poses costs, human ones too. The NAFTA experience shows how politicians and officials failed many communities which paid the worst possible price for the benefits gained by the rest of the economy. People need jobs and purpose. Permanent welfare for people who lose jobs creates other problems. Job retraining programs have not had much impact. Attempts to control the pace of innovation don't work, and trade that can create even more economic damage. The only thing that's clear as the economy faces another major potential shift in employment is that we need better answers.
Well, Ted, now that the new Bills Stadium is nearing completion and ticket sales have concluded, it turns out that with the stadium comes a new stream of Bills fans. The wait list is bringing thousands of season ticket holders aboard. After years of working to advance his career in places like Boston and New York City, Buffalo native Joe Avino dreamed of one day returning to Western New York. Part of that vision included one day becoming a Buffalo Bills season ticket holder. In 2024, he finally got the chance to move home. It was around that time when the Bills had started a wait list for fans hoping to get season tickets at the team's new $2 billion-plus stadium being built in Orchard Park. Avino jumped at the chance, dropping the required $150 per seat deposit in hopes of one day hearing back from the Bills. It took a few years, but Avino finally got his season tickets. Avino got the call months ago to come to the new Stadium Experience Center in Williamsville, where the team's sales consultant, Legends, pitched fans on buying a personal seat license. He became one of the lucky waitlisters able to snag seats at the new stadium. The Bills were able to get about 2,000 fans on the wait list, making for a significant group of first-time season ticket holders at the new stadium. But there were many fans left out. Only about 2 of every 9 fans on the wait list got the chance to buy season tickets before they sold out in December. Every season, there are fans who give up their season tickets for whatever reason, but it is rare for the team to have this many new season ticket holders all at once, especially during the team's 7-year playoff run. There was more attrition than usual this time because some fans didn't want to pay for the personal seat licenses required to have season tickets at the new stadium, which has capacity of about 60,000 fans or about 12,000 fewer seats than the old stadium. So, the Bills were able to take about 75% of their ticket base over to the new stadium. I figured I'd regret it if I didn't do it, Avino said, who works remotely for a software company in New York City. I saw a pair of seats in the 11th row at about the 10-yard line in the lower bowl, and I just said yes. I knew I wasn't going to have a whole lot of negotiating power in that process, and it was in my budget, so I just decided to go with it. I'm very grateful and excited that I have them, Avino added. Most fans who purchased seat licenses are from Western New York, like Avino, but they come from everywhere, the Bills have said. And more fans coming across the border only adds to what the Bills consider an important market in southern Ontario. I look at it like having real estate in an area everyone wants to be in, said Sandeep Chara, a Canadian who runs a small business in Fort Erie, Ontario, and is married to an American. Chara, who got on the wait list in September 2023, bought 2 seats in Section 141, Row 11. He comes to Buffalo about once a month, but has never been to a Bills game. That will change the next season. If we're coming across the border this much, I figured we needed to invest in Bills seats, said Chara, who is also a 10-year season ticket holder of the NBA's Toronto Raptors.
Okay. Our next headline is Iranian attacks on infrastructure spur anger in the region. The Iran war's targets widened dangerously into civilian infrastructure on Sunday as Bahrain accused Iran of striking one of its desalination plants that are crucial for Gulf nations' drinking water. Oil depots smoldered in Tehran after Israeli strikes, prompting environmental warnings. In a sign of rising anger in the region, the Arab League chief lashed out at Iran for its reckless policy of attacking its neighbors. Gulf countries have already been struck by hundreds of missiles and drones, and Iran's president vowed to expand attacks on U.S. targets on the 9th day of the war. Saudi Arabia reported its first death, saying a military projectile fell into a residential area and killed 2 people of Indian and Bangladeshi nationality. It said 12 other Bangladeshis were wounded. Foreign residents and workers have made up most of the war's deaths in the Gulf nations. President Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu have vowed to press ahead with the coordinated campaign against Iran, even as Washington's stated war aims have varied. Trump told ABC News he wants a say in who comes to power in Iran once the war is over, adding that the new leader is not going to last long without his approval. In Israel, the military reported the first soldier death since the war began, saying 2 were killed in southern Lebanon, while Israel targets the Iran-backed militant group Hezbollah. The war, which Israel and the United States launched with airstrikes on February 28th that killed Iran's supreme leader, has killed at least 1,230 people in Iran and at least 397 in Lebanon and at least 11 in Israel, according to officials. The U.S. military said a service member died of injuries from an Iranian attack on troops in Saudi Arabia on March 1st. 7 U.S. soldiers have now been killed in the war.
Well, next in some Washington news, the headline is the president's roaring economy meets a rough start to 2026, the data shows. President Trump promised that 2026 would be a bumper year for economic growth, but instead it has kicked off with job losses, rising gasoline prices, and more uncertainty about America's future. In his State of the Union address last month, the Republican president told the country, "The roaring economy is roaring like never before." The latest batch of data on jobs, pump prices, and the stock market suggests that Trump's roar has started to sound more like a whimper. There is a gap between the boom that Trump has predicted and the volatile results he has produced, one that could set the tone in this year's midterms as he tries to defend his party's majority in the House and Senate. With Trump's tariffs drama ongoing, the war in Iran has suddenly created inflationary concerns regarding oil and natural gas. To the White House, it is still early in the year and stronger growth is coming. "Wow, the golden age of America is upon us," Trump posted on social media on February 11th, after the monthly jobs report showed gains of 130,000 jobs in January. Since then, the job market has evaporated in worrisome ways. Friday's employment report showed job losses of 92,000 in February. The January and December figures were revised downward, with December swinging to a loss of 17,000 jobs. Monthly data can be rocky, but the trend has emerged that shows an enduring weakness. Without the healthcare sector, the economy would have shed roughly 202,000 jobs since Trump became president in January 2025. Still, his administration notes that construction job chains outside of the housing sector point to future hiring growth. Trump often brags that jobs are going to people born in the United States rather than to immigrants, but the latest report punctured some of that argument. The unemployment rate for people born in the U.S. has climbed over the past 12 months to 4.7% from 4.4%. This means a greater share of the people who Trump said would get jobs because of his immigration crackdown are, in fact, searching for work.
In health news, we have this article about transplant revolution. Most organ donations once came from people who were brain dead. Now they are increasingly coming from people who died when their heart stopped beating, a major shift that can boost transplants, but also raises public confusion, researchers reported. Donation after circulatory death, or DCD, jumped dramatically in a short period. It accounted for 49% of all deceased donors in the U.S. last year, up from 2% in the year 2000. Technology helped overcome barriers by using those organs, ways to keep them from deteriorating as the heartbeat winds down, spurring this type of donation amid a dire shortage. More than 100,000 people are on the transplant wait list, and thousands die waiting. Just more than 49,000 transplants were performed last year. Specialists from NYU found DCD is far more common in some parts of the country than others. That suggests better educating the public and hospitals about the option that could further increase access to life-saving transplants. The findings, published February 26th in the medical journal JAMA, came after some rare but scary reports of potential donors who showed signs of life, shook trust in the transplant system. Additional safeguards are being developed by federal officials and the nonprofit organ procurement organizations that the government certifies to coordinate donation. The new findings may aid that policymaking. DCD is complex, and we need to make sure we're doing it well, said Dr. Babak Orlandi, a transplant surgeon and study co-author. If we stop doing it or severely restrict it, there would be pretty significant repercussions for patients. While living donors can provide certain organs, most transplants are thanks to donations from the deceased. Brain death is declared when testing shows someone is no longer remaining brain function. If there's a possible organ donor, the body is kept on a ventilator to support the organs until they're retrieved. DCD can be an option if someone has a non-survivable injury but all brain function hasn't ceased, and the family chooses to end life support. Death occurs after the heart gradually stops beating. Once that happens, there's a mandatory wait, 5 minutes, according to the American Society of Transplant Surgeon guidelines, to be sure it won't restart. Then the person's doctor declares death. By law, donation and transplant groups cannot participate in the decision to end life support, and they're not in the room when it's cut off. Organ retrieval cannot begin until death is declared. If death doesn't occur quickly enough, within about 2 hours, the organs are not usable and retrieval is not attempted. To track the donor evolution, the NYU team analyzed data from the nation's organ procurement and transplantation network and from 55 OPOs that recover organs in assigned regions across the U.S. Last year, DCD accounted for more than half of the donors at 24 organ donation agencies. It also varied widely, with some agencies seeking far fewer of those donors. Hospital resources play a role according to the Association for Organ Procurement. Decisions to withdraw life support are common, but small or rural hospitals may not be as familiar with the extra steps involved with organ donation.
Well, next we have the My View column from the editorial page, and today's writer is Nicholas Behan of Westfield, who remembers some travel mishaps. It's titled Adventures Before the Cell Phone Era. Sure, cell phones today can get us out of jams, but back before we had them, we somehow persevered by embracing adventure and remaining watchful for a guiding light. It was the winter of 1977, the year of the Buffalo Blizzard, but that wouldn't stop me from heading to Greek Peak Ski Area south of Syracuse for the U.S. Ski Association freestyle competition. At 17, I was still skiing in the amateur ranks, not having yet graduated to the pro circuit. I borrowed my dad's 72 Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme, the last American convertible that would be made for many years, with that powerful V8 engine driving rear-wheel drive that I was sure would get me there with time to spare, even if a storm was moving in. Not knowing the exact route, I followed the sparks of discarded cigarettes illuminating from the night air from the car in front of me, but the snow increased as the night darkened. In the 70s, it wasn't a simple matter of calling for a tow truck when you slid off the road, as I had. Instead, I somehow had to get out of the car and wave down a good Samaritan. A kind fellow stopped, and I requested that he call a tow truck from the next exit. Apparently he obliged because a truck came and pulled me out. Now I had to find my way to Cortland with all the instincts to direct me, but it would have been helpful if I'd had a full tank of gas because within minutes I ran out. I had no way to call for assistance. However, this was one I thought I could solve on my own. All I needed was a gallon of gas, and I saw a faraway light in a field far off the highway. A guiding beacon of sorts, I trudged through deep snow over a fence to the farmer's house. A good Samaritan gave me a can of gas, and I was able to get moving again. When I finally found my coaches at the motel in Cortland around midnight, they asked what happened to me. It had been decades, so my memory may not serve, but I believe I said something about wanting to take my time, enjoy the scenery, and meet interesting people along the way. That I did. Kind ones, too.
As part of our newspaper reading, we now present the day's death listings. But for the first time, since I've been reading, we don't have any death listings or any obituaries. So if you have any questions about that, you can call us at the studio, and it's 716-821-5555. Again, that's 716-821-5555.
Apparently nobody has died. That's good news.
Must be the Sabres.
All right, we'll move on now to Georgia Nichols Royal Stars. And today is your birthday. Happy birthday. You are individualistic, enthusiastic, and imaginative. You want harmony in life. You value justice. This is a year of work and construction, both externally and internally, because it's time to build solid foundations. Now, the stars show what kind of a day you're going to have. 5 stars is a dynamic day. 4 stars is a positive day. 3 is an average day. 2 are so-so. And if you only got 1 star, it's a difficult day. And fortunately, today, nobody has 1 star. We'll start with Aries. It's a 4-star day. Today has strong conciliatory vibes, which means that it's the perfect day to patch up quarrels or reach out and smooth troubled waters. Tonight, you want to avoid controversy. For us Taurians, we're having a 4-star day today. Financial discussions will go well today. In fact, assistance from others or practical or financial support from someone might secretly benefit you. Tonight, we should check our finances. For Gemini, it's a 3-star day. It's an excellent day to reach out to close friends, partners, and spouses to improve your connection with them. Tonight, be cooperative. Cancer, 4 stars. You make a great impression on others today. In fact, this great impression could lead to a new romance. Tonight, you should get organized. For Leo, it's also a 4-star day. Grab every chance to travel for pleasure. This will delight you. Meanwhile, romance with someone from afar or from another culture might percolate in person or online. Tonight, relax. For Virgo, it's a 3-star day. It's a friendly, easygoing day for many because it's the perfect day to patch up family arguments or any dissension taking place at home. Tonight, you want to cocoon at home. For Libra, 3 stars. Relations with relatives, siblings, and neighbors are particularly warm and friendly today. Tonight, you should listen to others. For Scorpio, 3 stars. Issues relating to cash flow, spending, expenses, your job, or your health will flow smoothly today. People will be helpful. Tonight, check your money. Sagittarius, 4 stars. This is a marvelous day for your sign because the moon is in Sagittarius, which will pave the way for loving, sympathetic, and understanding relations with everyone. Tonight, stay firm. For Capricorn, 3 stars. Transportation delays, goofy mistakes, and mixed-up communication continue to plague your days. Be sympathetic tonight. For Aquarius, 4 stars. This might be a productive day if you have a chance to sit down with a friend or a member of a group and think about your hopes and dreams. Tonight the word is friendships. And finally, for Pisces, it's a 3-star day. You're high vis today. People notice you. Some might ask for your financial advice. Others might admire you because you appear to have values that they respect. But tonight, you want to avoid conflict.
As we look back in history, on March 9th in 1796, the future emperor of the French, Napoleon Bonaparte, married Josephine de Beauharnais. In 1841, the U.S. Supreme Court in United States versus the Amistad ruled 7-1 in favor of a group of illegally enslaved Africans who were captured off the U.S. coast after seizing control of a Spanish schooner, La Amistad. The justices ruled that the Africans should be set free. In 1862, during the American Civil War, the ironclad warships USS Monitor and CSS Virginia, which was formerly known as the USS Merrimack, clashed for 5 hours to a draw at Hampton Roads, Virginia. The first engagement of ironclad warships opened a new era in naval warfare. In 1945, during World War II, over 300 U.S. B-29 bombers began Operation Meeting House, a massive firebombing raid on Tokyo. The raid killed an estimated 100,000 civilians, left 1 million people homeless, and destroyed 60 square miles of the city. In 1959, the Barbie doll was introduced at the American International Toy Fair in New York. In 1964, the Supreme Court, in New York Times versus Sullivan, raised the standard for public officials to prove they'd been libeled in their official capacity by news organizations. And finally, in 1997, rapper the notorious B.I.G., whose also real name was Christopher Wallace, was killed in a still unsolved drive-by shooting in Los Angeles at the age of 24.
You're listening to a reading of articles from the Buffalo News for Monday, March 9th on your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We'll return for more readings after this short break. Your readers today are
Ted Pajacki.
And I'm Ed Howard.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
And welcome back. We'll now continue with our reading of articles from today's Buffalo News. And your readers today are
Ed Howard
and Ted Pajak. And we turn now to the city and regional news. And this headline, Roswell Park plans to buy Cheektowaga properties for $4 million for expanded administrative space. Roswell Park Comprehensive Cancer Center is planning to buy several properties in Cheektowaga for a potential administrative expansion, the latest example of the organization growing beyond its main campus in Buffalo. Roswell Park's Board of Directors on March 2nd approved a resolution to purchase parcels at 1620 to 6450 Transit Road, 5079 Genesee Street, 5087 Genesee Street, and a portion of 22 Cloverleaf Drive from Marauder Enterprises, LLC, for no more than $4 million, according to a copy of the resolution posted online last week by the Cancer Center. The properties, totaling more than 10 acres, include a one-story, 59,000 square foot structure built in 1985 on Transit Road and a one-story, 3,000 foot square building constructed in 2005 on Genesee Street. The larger building houses a Roswell Park Care Network clinical practice at 6420 Transit Road that focuses on general dermatology and skin cancer. In a statement, Roswell Park said the purchase provides Roswell Park and the Roswell Park Care Network opportunity for expanded administrative space. In documents posted online, Roswell Park said it plans to maintain continuity for existing leases at the property, although almost half of Transit Road buildings are underused. The corporation plans to sustain current occupancy levels through existing or comparable lease agreements while implementing a phased integration of its operations into the 30,000 square feet of currently underutilized space, according to the document. The resolution states that the property purchase creates the opportunity to relocate some administrative personnel from Roswell Park's main campus and from RPCI Oncology PC, the entity that owns the community practices within the Roswell Park Care Network. Kaleida Health has a general physician women's health location at 6440 Transit Road. Kaleida spokesperson Jacqueline Bett said that while Kaleida is not aware of Roswell Park's plans for the building, General Physician has a sublease for that space signed through 2034 and plans to continue to provide women's health services at that location. According to the board-approved resolution, Roswell Park in January posted a contracting opportunity called Commercial Office Building Purchase, and it received one response from Marauder Enterprises by the deadline on February 17th. The purchase fits into Roswell Park's ongoing efforts to expand its reach and stretch beyond its downtown campus. For one, the clinical practice on Transit Road is part of the Roswell Park Care Network, which was launched in 2012 to boost Roswell Park's geographic reach and provide many patients with convenient, close-to-home locations to receive most of their cancer care. The Care Network is a mix of community practices like the Transit Road site and partnerships and affiliations with existing health systems in Watertown, Oneida, Schenectady, and other municipalities. In addition, Roswell Park has been growing a major outpatient hub in Amherst to serve its patient base in the North Towns. Roswell Park opened a two-story, 30,000 square foot Scott Beeler Amherst Center at 203 Park Lane in September, and it's now embarking on a $20 million plan on a multi-specialty ambulatory surgery hospital extension clinic next door at 199 Park Club Lane.
Well, next we have a story from Lakeshore, and we always hear about how there are opportunities in technical education for high school students, and this is headlined, Lakeshore's new bus fleet maintenance program can spark careers. Signs already abound that Lakeshore Central School District's new bus fleet maintenance program was worth the effort. For instance, there was the bus window that malfunctioned last week. The emergency windows, a wire rubbed through and triggered the alarm, said Clayton Blaze, one of 2 teachers teaching the first-year program. There was a fault. The window was shut, but the alarm kept going off. It wasn't one of the 5 mechanics that work in the bus garage that stopped the annoying beeping. It was a student named Avery, he said, a junior in the program. He was excited he was able to fix it, Blaze said. Fleet maintenance is a 2-year offering at Lakeshore High School, a state education accredited career and technical education program opened this year to 12 upperclassmen. Instead of an hour bus ride to Erie to BOCES in Fredonia, these high school students walk to the district's bus garage and for 2 hours each day learn briefly in a small classroom in the garage and then implement their knowledge through hands-on work. We'll show something on Electude, said Blaze, referring to a learning platform. Then we go right to the buses. Students either work individually or in pairs spread across garage bays where they're supervised by Blaze and co-teacher Ryan Waters. Topics so far have included changing tires and brakes and learning the basics of steering and suspension. The goal at the end of the year is to take any student and say, go change a tire, go change brakes, diagnose this electrical issue, and they can do it on their own with no guidance, Blaze said. They might shadow or work along a professional mechanic too, which has made an impact on some students. We're working in a real-life environment. People are here doing their job, said Parker Klepfer, a student in the program. It's nice to get that workplace experience being so young. The instruction is yet to dig deeply into electric functionality and performance of the district's all-electric fleet, which was funded by a $7.9 million grant from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency and implemented last summer. Blaze said mechanics are still digesting much of that knowledge, but a lot of the basics of fixing a school bus are important regardless of how it's powered. You see the waiting list and how long it takes to get your car into the shop right now, said Katie Berner-Wallen, Lakeshore High School's principal. What an incredible opportunity for kids. In addition to coordinating, certifying, staffing the program, Lakeshore also benefited from past investments, including a capital project that expanded the bus garage to provide enough space for students. The Transportation Department funded 5 toolkits which students share, while outside organizations donated an engine and other parts. In order to receive state accreditation, Lakeshore had to partner with a higher education entity. It chose Erie Community College, which influences the standards and curriculum and will recognize the credits, Berner-Wallen said. The second year of the program, in which students can intern in the garage, should be a boon for the district too, which has struggled to find mechanics. Klepfer was among the students last week who stopped to consider how mechanical jobs might fit into their futures. Klepfer still intends to go to college, but he knows fleet maintenance will still broaden his opportunities. For now, he's absorbing as much information as he can, especially as it pertains to electrical components. How much wiring goes into buses is pretty cool to see it worked on, he said. There are so many little wires everywhere.
In our next article hits home. Its data supports claim that New York residents pay more for power. Amid steep national price increases for certain consumer items, Republican State Senator Tom O'Mara criticized the high cost of living in the Empire State. Republicans in the legislature, including O'Mara, have launched a Save New York campaign to tackle the cost of living, including electricity rates. O'Mara is backing a bill that would return $2 to $3 billion in unspent money to taxpayers. The money would come from the New York State Energy and Research Development Authority, which is tasked with promoting energy efficiency, renewable energy, and emissions reduction. In the column, O'Mara said such efforts are important because New Yorkers pay 49% more than the national average for electricity. Federal data supports O'Mara's statistic, though the percentage varies by the type of customer, and New York's rates are lower than most New England states. O'Mara, whose district includes portions of central New York and the southern tier, including Corning and Elmira, responded to our inquiry with a post to the Empire Center for Public Policy article warning about the rising prices of electricity in New York. According to the article, in October 2025, the average residential electricity price in New York hit 26.95 cents per kilowatt hour, about 50% higher than the U.S. average and among the top 10 highest rates nationwide. This aligns with slightly more recent data collected by the Federal Energy Information Administration. The federal agency found that residential users in New York paid average electricity prices of 26.49 cents per kilowatt hour in November 25. The national rate that month was 17.78 cents per kilowatt hour. So New York State's rate was exactly 49% higher than the national average. The premium paid by commercial users in New York State was similar to what residential users paid, 50% above the national average. Two other categories of users, industrial and transportation, were closer to the national average, but still above it. Industrial users, which include major plants with dedicated electricity supplies, paid 6% more than the national average, while transportation users such as rail paid 15% more. New York compared favorably with some of its regional neighbors. Among New England states, residential customers in Massachusetts paid 31.22 cents per kilowatt hour. In Rhode Island, they paid 30.82, Maine 27.85, New Hampshire 27.37, Connecticut 27.02. The only New England state that was less expensive than New York was Vermont, where residential customers paid 24.17 cents per kilowatt hour. Two states in the Mid-Atlantic region, New Jersey and Pennsylvania, had lower prices than New York, with 22.73 and 20.17 cents respectively. O'Mara said New Yorkers pay 49% more than the national average. Federal data from November 25 shows that this is correct for residential and commercial users. Costs for industrial and transportation users were above the national average, but not as dramatically. While O'Mara blamed New York's Democrats for the high electricity prices, New York's electricity costs are below that of most New England states, although they are higher than two Mid-Atlantic states. So we have come to the conclusion that the statement is true, but needs additional information as we rate it mostly true.
Well, here's some good news. There's optimism at the SEPA Gallery after a demoralizing flood. Most programs are resuming weeks after a catastrophic event. SEPA Gallery in Buffalo's historic Market Arcade has resumed programming with some limitations after flooding in its basement last month caused tens of thousands of dollars in damage. There are some things we can't do at the moment, SEPA Executive Director Ben Hickey said. For instance, more than half the gallery's computers and other equipment were destroyed in the February 5th flood, but the public darkroom, which Hickey believes is the largest of its kind in western New York, was fully functional as of last Monday. Photographers can rent darkroom space at low cost and use the facility's enlargers, chemicals, and print services. The darkroom equipment, we were able to dry it, disassemble it, in many instances repair it with some losses. We got to it fast, so our volunteers helped us get to that quickly, that it's repairable, Hickey said. However, in the digital lab, we lost more than half our computers. We lost a brand new big printer, and other kinds of technical equipment are all losses. Matt Connors, Vice President of Development in Sinatra Development, said a broken sprinkler from a hotel next door was the source of the flooding. He said the building itself did not sustain permanent damage. Hickey, who described the damage as catastrophic, said the water reached depths of 6 to 12 inches and came pouring down from the top of basement walls. Much of the gallery's equipment that was damaged, including photographic enlargers, film scanners, specialized equipment for art photography, and a printer capable of making massive photo prints for art expositions. Televisions, a number of computers, and office equipment were also destroyed or badly damaged. Still, Hickey said he's feeling optimistic. We're preparing to submit our final assessment or paperwork to our insurance company, so we'll have more certainty there. One of the events that will resume is the opening for the Face ID, a surveil of Chehui-Su, which was postponed last month because of the damage. Su uses performance, photography, and installation to explore the dynamics between being watched and watching, questioning how surveillance influences human behavior and identity. A belated opening reception, will be held from 5 to 8 p.m. on March 13th. It's free and open to the public, and the exhibit will be on view until April 10th.
You are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier radio reading service. The time is 16 minutes after the hour. And now we turn to the sports section. And this first article is by Buffalo News reporter Mike Harrington. And the headline is, "Remarkable victory was a galvanizing moment for new era of Sabres hockey." Alex Tuck asked us media types if we had fun Sunday night. Memo to number 89, who is always willing with a good quip. I ask the questions. I don't answer them. So I asked him the same thing back. Did you have fun? Oh yeah, said a beaming Tuck. It's a lot of fun. That's hockey right there. It's awesome. Really happy to get those 2 points, and I'm just so proud of our team. Downright he should be. The Sabres' mind-boggling 8-7 victory over the Tampa Bay Lightning easily rates as the game of the year in the National Hockey League. And there hasn't been a night in KeyBank Center like that since the infamous Brawl Juice shootout over Ottawa in 2007. This one had everything. Goals, penalties, punch fast, ludicrous officiating, stars doing star things, Tampa Bay's Brendan Hagel flat-outed mugging Rasmus Dahlin. All of it. There's your game. You might look back on as one in the history books when it comes to this new era of Buffalo Sabres of hockey. And yes, these last 3 months feel like the start of an era. This team is not going to be some one-hit wonder. That's the kind of galvanizing game, said Coach Lindy Ruff. Everybody involved. Everybody showed up. Lots of everything in that game. We've come a long ways, obviously. The group has got real tight, and it showed up tonight. Sabres aren't going to get pushed around by Tampa Bay's shenanigans or whatever any other team wants to try. In fact, they're going to add even more toughness to their lineup when 6'7" Logan Stanley and veteran Luke Shane get their visas issued so they can get on ice sometime this week. For a team with legitimate designs on playing well into May and maybe even June, that's an important takeaway. Then there's the game itself. You're up 3 goals twice. Then you suddenly go from 4-1 lead to deficits of 6-4 and 7-5. That would be one heck of a heartbreaker, especially at home in a showdown for the division lead. But this team wasn't going to cave, and neither did its fans. We could not have done this without the crowd we had, Dahlin said. They kept us in the game the whole match, and it was an unbelievable atmosphere. That's probably the top I've ever experienced. The fans were roaring most of the night. They were on their feet a whole lot of the time in the last 7 minutes. It is KeyBank Library no more. It gave me chills at the end of the game, how loud they were, Tuck said. Added Jason Zucker, my ears are still ringing. The fist and sticks. Cheap shots were flying all night. The teams combined for 102 penalty minutes, and the boxes were overflowing with players at one stage of that first period. The building was in an uproar. The entertainment value off the chart. It was March 8th, but it may as well have been May 8th. If you've forgotten what the Stanley Cup playoffs are like, there was your taste. A lot of tough times would have to strike one team or the other for the Sabres and Lightning to meet in Round 1 of the playoffs, but they could be on a clear collision course for Round 2. The first 3 games of this season series have been pretty epic. Sunday's affair was downright seismic in many ways. The Lightning clearly established that they were going to go after Dahlin, and the Sabres better put a target on the likes of Nikita Kucherov or Braden Point. You go after our star, we're going after yours. And if you really want eye for eye justice, the Sabres are going to have to make some statements on Tampa Bay winger Hagel. The long ago Buffalo draft pick entered the game with 29 goals and 57 points, and should be exiting with at least a fine, if not a suspension, from the National Hockey League's Department of Player Safety. Hagel mugged Dahlin with repeated blows from behind during one of the second period scrums that officials were far too slow to put the kibosh on. Josh Doan got in to stop Hagel, with goalie Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen just a step behind. I think I stayed calm, Dahlin said. We got a power play goal out of it. We just have to continue to do that. Frustrate the other guys, and then get some power plays. I'm not a referee, but a situation like that, usually a guy gets kicked out, Ruff said. He doesn't get 4 minutes. He probably should get 2 for every punch he gave, and it probably would lead to about a penalty of 20 minutes. According to OpStats, the NHL has not had a game with 15 goals and 28 penalties since a Washington-St. Louis affair in 1993. The Lightning had won 60 straight games when scoring 7+ goals, and their only loss in franchise history when scoring 7 was a 9-7 defeat to Calgary in their first year of play. Lightning coach John Cooper has waited for years for the Sabres to get good. He always liked their prospects in the Jack Eichel era. Before the game, he had some prescient thoughts on where they're heading that backed up the game. Good for them. I'm happy for them, Cooper said, pointing down the hall to the Sabres locker room. I'm happy for the city of Buffalo. It's probably our biggest TV market, and we have in the NHL, and they never get to see their own team in the playoffs. So it's super cool that they support their team all this time, and their team is going to go to the playoffs. That is super cool. It sure was. The Sabres and Lightning will meet here again on April 6th, and who knows after that. Wouldn't that be fun? Finally, we're here, Dahlin said. We're doing good things. I don't take this for granted at all. I'm so fired up. I'm happy for Buffalo as a city and for all the fans. The old coach was happy too. Just to see all the smiles on the faces, to see the reaction of them coming into the room. It puts a smile on the coach's face, Ruff said. You see a couple of guys, faces a little swollen, and a couple of scrapes. It just puts a smile on my face. That's my kind of hockey.
Well, there's still Bills news, too, and the question here in Lance Lasowski's column is, free agency preview. Does a Bills reunion with Tremaine Edmunds make sense? Tremaine Edmunds never wanted to leave the Buffalo Bills, and nearly 3 years since his departure, the talented linebacker may have an opportunity to finally return to the place where his NFL journey began. The Chicago Bears are expected to release Edmunds, according to reports, in a move that creates $15 million of cap space. Edmunds had 112 tackles and 9 passes defended in 13 starts. He was entering the final year of a 4-year, $72 million contract he signed as a free agent in 2023. Edmunds was given permission to seek a trade, but teams must have known he'd eventually get cut. The timing could align perfectly for a reunion, as the Bills need help at inside linebacker, and Edmunds is arguably a better fit for the 3-4 scheme they'll run under new defensive coordinator Jim Lenhart than the one he played in during his 4-year seasons for Sean McDermott. Edmunds, a 2-time Pro Bowl selection with the Bills, turns 28 years old in May. He's still a productive player. The only injury issue from 2025 was a nagging groin that forced him to miss 4 games. The price will need to be right for Buffalo to be interested, because it's a deep free agent class at the position, and the draft has some intriguing positions at inside linebacker, though the Bills traded their second-round pick to Chicago as part of the DJ Moore deal. It's also unclear what kind of skill set the Bills are seeking at inside linebacker, where they have 2 pending free agents and a defensive captain who's coming off an injury-plagued season. Lenhart's priority is to stop the run, but the player will also need the athleticism to make plays in the passing game and create chaos when used as a blitzer.
Our next sports article is the end of an era, as Bonaventure coach Schmidt is retiring after 19 years. St. Bonaventure men's basketball coach Mark Schmidt is retiring at the end of this season. Bona's 19-year bench boss confirmed his retirement after a 68-63 loss to Davidson on Saturday afternoon at the Riley Center. ESPN's Pete Thamel reported Sunday morning that Schmidt, the program's all-time winningest coach, was expected to retire, according to a source. An Olean Star column reported that sources close to Schmidt confirmed he was leaving. The Bonnies concluded their regular season 15-16 and 4-14 in the Atlantic 10. They will be the number 13 seed when the A10 tourney begins on Wednesday. Davidson improved to 19-12 and 10-8. I'm retiring today, Schmidt said after the post-game presser. I will coach on Wednesday. I'm 63 years old and it's time to move. My family has sacrificed for 37 years. My wife is an industrial engineer, smart as a whip. She doesn't work and she followed me. So it's time, and my children as well, it's time for me to give back a little bit. Jeff Goodman, co-founder of Field 68, reported that Schmidt would consider coaching again with the right situation. Goodman also included a list of coaches Bona is expected to target to replace Schmidt as the men's basketball coach. Among them are Damon's Mike McDonald, a 1998 St. Bonaventure graduate whose Wildcats are ranked number 4 nationally in Division II and are hosting the Eastern Coast Conference Tournament this week in Amherst. McDonald won his 500th game in December. Merrimack's Joe Gallo, Washington Wizards assistant coach Dave Vanderpool, Central Connecticut State's Pat Sellers, and Alabama assistant Brian Adams are also possible candidates to replace Schmidt as bench boss. St. Bonaventure will conduct a national search for its next head coach immediately.
Well, the NFL is coming up on its own March Madness here. The free agency signing period officially begins on Wednesday. One of the most frenzied times on the NFL calendar is almost here, free agency. As players move to new teams and those teams begin to take shape for the 2026 season, there will be plenty of news, but teams, players, general managers like Buffalo Bills' Brandon Beane, and agents have to operate within strict rules to avoid tampering. So here are some quick basics on the dates, terms, and rules to know. The free agency signing period and NFL New Year officially begin at 4 p.m. on Wednesday. At that time, moves such as the Bills' trade with the Bears for DJ Moore will become official. Also at that time, teams must be in compliance with the salary cap. The salary cap is $301,200,000 per team this season, and the Bills are still not cap compliant, so look for a few more moves by the team before Wednesday. For other teams that ended the 2025 season under the cap, there is the option to roll over the cap space. To do so, qualified teams must have already alerted the NFL the day after their final regular season game. Before the league new year, however, there is a 2-day negotiating period for potential unrestricted free agents starting at noon today and up until 4 p.m. Wednesday. Teams can contact and negotiate with the agents of players who officially become free agents at the start of the league new year. This happens strictly through agents. The moves from this legal tampering period become official at 4 p.m. on Wednesday, which is when players can actually sign their contracts. And that is why teams cannot announce these moves until then, although some teams will hint at them on social media in advance. And I'll put a question to everybody here. I don't know if we can answer it today or not, but which do you think is going to happen sooner? The Bills win the Super Bowl or the Sabres win the Stanley Cup?
Wow, good question.
Yep.
Good question.
There you go.
You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier radio reading service. The time is 31 minutes after the hour. And now, if you need some good advice, we're going to ask Eric. The headline is Pal's Inflated Ego Slowly Squeezing the Life Out of Our Friendship. Dear Eric, I have a friend that I generally enjoy spending time with. However, she feels the need to constantly put into conversation how great she is. I call it tooting your own horn. She can be very dramatic in general. I usually just don't engage with those comments because giving it air would be validating her grandiose ideas of her own self-worth. The thing is, she's not a bad person, and it will definitely be there if you need her. But this constant self-promotion is very off-putting. Calling her out directly would make her angry and defensive because she is, after all, the best. Do you have any suggestions on how to deal with this type of behavior? Avoiding her isn't an option. And it's signed, Tired of It. And Eric replies, Dear Tired, you wrote that you generally ignore her grandiose statements, and that might continue to be the best course of action if you enjoy your friend's other aspects and don't want to talk to her about it. You might also reframe these statements in your mind. It's quite possible that she feels the need to toot her own horn because of some deeper insecurity. Maybe she feels she needs to call herself great because she secretly believes she isn't. Or maybe she's just conceited, or has high self-confidence. Whatever the reason, one tactic is to remind yourself this is something she needs to do. It doesn't have any bearing on me. It won't completely prevent it from being annoying, but it may lessen its impact on your relationship. Another option is to approach this habit with curiosity. The next time she toots her own horn, you can ask about it instead of ignoring it. I've noticed you make comments about that a lot. Have you noticed that too? Can you tell me about it? Interesting. Next letter. Dear Eric, I'm a 54-year-old divorced dad. I was dating a woman for just over 6 months. In a lot of ways, it was the healthiest relationship I've had in a long time. We had strong alignment on the big things: values, lifestyle interests, chemistry, kindness, and like. We supported each other through real life stuff, and I genuinely felt we were building something solid. Then it ended very suddenly. On a Tuesday morning, she texted that she was having doubts and that things had been building up. We talked the next morning and she said the little things became bigger than the big things. She listed several specific issues: my house, its decor and cleanliness, my sense of humor, I'm playful, she's more serious, worries about travel because I have teenage boys, and concerns about finances and retirement stability. What I'm struggling with is that she had concerns. It's that I didn't know they had grown into deal breakers and there was no work on it together phase. It felt like she quietly decided, then delivered the verdict. When we met one last time, she was worried I'd try to convince her. I told her I wasn't. I just wanted to be heard and to understand. It felt like the final shutdown. Here's where I'm stuck. I still care about her. I'm also hurt and honestly shocked at how quickly she cut it off, given how good it felt overall. Is there any healthy reason to reach out again? Or is the kindest thing to both of us to just let it be? How do you get closure when someone ends a relationship quickly and you never really get to talk through it? And it's signed, Sleepless in Louisville. And Eric replies, Dear Sleepless, this is a really tough way to be broken up with. It often feels quite unfair. However, the issue that makes this breakup sudden and painful is the same issue that can lead to unhappiness in ongoing relationships. An inability on the part of one or both people to communicate with openness and vulnerability. So, without a track record or playbook for clear communication, I worry that any further contact is just going to hurt you more rather than give you the closure that you seek. Closure is itself a form of communication. I think you'll be better served by having a conversation with yourself. Acknowledge what you wanted to happen and what hurts about this relationship's end. Actively accept that it has ended, despite your wants and the best efforts. Acceptance also involves releasing her mentally. Sure, you'll still think about her, but when you do remind yourself that this is someone who you've sent off into the rest of her journey, not a what if or could have been. Lastly, you may have to redefine what closure means to you in this context. You will probably not get the conversation that you want, but you do have the ability to care for yourself, to honor your feelings, and to take the time that it takes to do this.
Well, next we have an article entitled A Friend in Need. If you're feeling lonely, you're not alone. Reconnecting with old pals can help, and this comes from Harvard Health Publishing. Research shows that about 1/3 of Americans report feeling lonely. Mental health problems linked to loneliness include higher rates of anxiety, depression, suicide, anger, and violence. Loneliness also affects physical health, contributing to an increased risk of heart disease, stroke, high blood pressure, infection, diabetes, dementia, and early death. One effective way to cope with loneliness is to strengthen your existing relationships and reconnect with friends and family who may have drifted apart. Loneliness is a feeling that you're not connected to other people or that you don't belong. Lonely people feel as if they don't have anyone they can confide in or do things with. It's possible to be surrounded by people and still feel lonely. There are many factors that can contribute to feeling lonely. Friends or family members may no longer live nearby. Participation in volunteer or religious groups is declining. Online shopping makes it easy to rarely leave the house, reducing opportunities to meet new people or run into friends and acquaintances. Social media sometimes causes people to compare their lives with others, and may create feelings of coming up short or missing out. For some people, having a chronic illness, losing a spouse, or having a low income or recently moving to a new home or job can contribute to loneliness. You might think the best way to deal with loneliness is to make new friends, and that can be certainly helpful, but also consider the relationships you already have. You have a head start when you can draw on shared memories and experiences. It's not so simple, however, as relationships take effort. If they aren't nurtured, they can wither and fade, and a strong first step towards conquering loneliness is to think about what you can do to improve relationships in your life. One way to build deeper relationships with family and friends is by demonstrating that you care about them. To do that, you might consider scheduling times to get together regularly, listening as much as you speak, asking questions about their lives and activities. Another way to cope with loneliness is to reach out to a friend or family member with whom you've lost contact. If you don't have their phone number, you might ask a mutual acquaintance or a family member, or you might find them through online research. And physical distance doesn't have to be a barrier. If you live a few hours apart, consider meeting at a location in the middle once a month or every few months. For example, you might try out different lunch spots each time you see each other, or visit an attraction that interests you both, such as a museum, historical site, botanical garden, zoo, or gallery. You might also consider scheduling day trips to new towns or hike together in a park that you can both visit.
Well, our recent weather here in the 60s has kind of given us a sense of what some people have called a false spring. And that means that spring break is just around the corner. And our next article talks about stress-free school breaks. School breaks give children and parents a much-needed pause. But breaks can also bring stress. Routines change for your child and family, and time spent together in close settings can cause patience to run short. With a little planning, though, a school break can be a time to relax, have fun, and focus on your mental health. If you're staying home for a break, what do you do? Well, when school is not in session, your child's routine might change. They might wake up at a different time, and their activities and routines might vary. While routines may be more relaxed during break, having a regular routine is important for children of all ages. Routines support healthy mental and emotional development by providing kids with a sense of stability and connection. During a school break, your child might need to spend more time with family. Older children may be asked to take on more responsibility while parents are working. These expectations can conflict with their plans for school break. Clear and intentional communication about expectations and understanding what is important to your child will help things run more smoothly. Your child might not get to see their school friends during breaks, which might lead to your child feeling isolated. If possible, plan ahead with your child about creative ways for them to stay connected. Young children do best with predictability and structure. Creating a schedule that is similar to their school schedule can help them to get into a routine during breaks. Teens might need a conversation about expectations so they stay on track with a schedule until school resumes. Developing a school break schedule can include setting a wake-up time and a bedtime close to your child's school time schedule, providing snacks and meals in a similar time frame as their usual schedule, and encouraging your child to engage in activities throughout the day, whether that be lone activities such as reading or drawing, or playtime with friends. If your family needs another caregiver while you are at work, provide the caretaker with a written schedule and a list of activities. Now, if you're traveling during a break, during a school break can be an exciting time for your family, but traveling can also be stressful. Young children benefit most when you help prepare them for how to navigate a stressful or overwhelming situation. Talk with your child before the trip to help them understand what will happen on your way to and from your destination. Help them pack a small backpack with things for them to do on the plane or in the car. Engage your older children in planning your trip. They can help you select locations that you'll visit, pack snacks, and choose rest stops. Decide what activities you'll do and schedule breaks during the day. Older children can also pack their own bags and select items to bring that will keep them occupied in airports or on long car trips. If you are traveling by plane, talk with your child about what will happen at the airport to calm their fears. Arrive well before your flight to allow some wiggle room for unexpected situations, and focus on remaining calm with breathing exercises. You can even do them with your child for added security. If you are traveling by car, look ahead of time for locations for bathroom breaks or other emergencies, and inform your child of those plans to ensure that their needs are met. As a parent, you might find yourself carrying most of the stress and anxiety during a trip. It's important to check in with yourself, practice your own self-care, and take breaks whenever you can. If you have a child who requires more attention to their physical, emotional, or behavioral health needs, talk with their doctor or provider before your trip about how best to support their needs. Many airlines, parks, and other organizations provide accommodations to travelers with special needs.
Well, next we'll turn to our entertainment page, and the headline here is As Brilliant as Its Namesake. You are a work in progress, Sherlock Holmes is told late in Young Sherlock, Prime Video's new origin series about the world's greatest detective, and it's true. He's young, irreverent, self-assured to the point of arrogance. Though, to be fair, he'd be those latter descriptors no matter the age. Young Sherlock, though, is anything but a work in progress. Directed by Guy Ritchie, the 8-part series is, like its namesake, simply brilliant, a fusion of witty banter, clever humor, and punchy action that keeps you on the edge of your horse-drawn carriage seat from start to finish. Adapted from Andrew Lane's Young Sherlock Holmes book series, which itself is based on the works of Arthur Conan Doyle, Young Sherlock opens with a mystery, quickly followed by a prison yard fistfight featuring none other than one 19-year-old Sherlock, and played by hero Phineas Tiffin. That blend of cerebral and physical, a repeating motif in Young Sherlock, is standard operating procedure for the hit-or-miss Ritchie, who also directed 2009's fantastic Sherlock Holmes and 2011's slightly overstuffed Sherlock Holmes Game of Shadows. But he doesn't miss here. In fact, Young Sherlock is his best work in years. The series oozes with his signature style, from its blistering pacing and well-choreographed action sequences to its whip-smart humor and high regard for competence. In parentheses, it wouldn't hurt to brush up on your Shakespeare, Machiavelli, and Sun Tzu. But more than anything, it's just unadulterated fun. There are mysteries to solve, secret locations and passageways to discover, random stuff to blow up or set on fire, and it's all infused with an infectious charm and heart. But back to those mysteries. The core of any good Holmes story, and what we have is a good one right here. Set in the 1870s Victorian England, there are murders of Oxford professors, and a Chinese princess with secrets aplenty, and a talent for close quarters combat. And a mother distraught with grief, sent away to an asylum, who says they, in quotes, are listening to her every word. How do all these intersect, and more important, how does it involve Sherlock? As the episodes progress, Ritchie and showrunner Matthew Parkhill weave a tale of intrigue that delights in surprising you. A perfect example, the portrayal of James Moriarty, a criminal mastermind long described as Holmes' archenemy. In young Sherlock, James is just an Oxford student until his path crosses Sherlock's and the two become close friends. Played by show-stealing Donal Finn, James at first comes across as a more charming version of Sherlock, but he's so much more than he seems, and the interplay between him and Sherlock, centered on morality, ethics, and whether the ends justify the means, is the highlight of the show. That Fiennes Tiffin and Finn share a crackling chemistry is just the cherry on top. And Finn isn't the only well-cast actor. Zine Seng gives a chameleon-like performance as Princess Golan Shuan, while Natasha McElhone will break your heart as Cordelia, Sherlock's mother. Max Irons is pitch perfect as Sherlock's older brother, Mycroft, and Colin Firth is clearly having a blast as the loathsome Bucephalus Hodge, one of Britain's richest men. All that is set to punk and rock-heavy soundtrack. Flogging Molly's Devil's Dance Floor may be the best needle drop for a British fistfight ever, and Ritchie's typical cinematic flair. Expect plenty of stylish transitions and flourishes throughout, including my favorite, the visual representation of Sherlock's mental calculations. Early in young Sherlock, there's a toast to Sherlock and his extraordinary future, and with young Sherlock, the game is afoot, and here's hoping it continues to be.
Well, I think I know you just set up my evening schedule for tonight. I got to check that one out.
There you go.
In relations between the United States and China, our next headline says, Foreign Minister Hopeful. China said it hopes this year will be a landmark year for its relationship with its biggest competitor, the U.S., striking a largely positive tone ahead of an expected summit between the leaders of the two countries later this month. China's Foreign Minister, Wang Yi, speaking on Sunday at a press briefing on the sidelines of an annual meeting of China's ceremony legislature, said it was a big year for the relationship between the two world powers. He said that while there are many differences, the two heads of state have personally maintained good exchanges at the highest level, providing a level of strategic guarantee for the bilateral relationship. U.S. President Donald Trump is due to visit Beijing for a summit with China's President Xi Jinping at the end of March. While Wang did not confirm the visit, he signaled that Beijing is looking for a less fraught relationship. The agenda for high-level exchanges is already on our table. What needs to be done now is for both sides to make thorough preparations for this, foster a suitable atmosphere, manage existing differences, and eliminate unnecessary distractions, Wang said. China's attitude has always been positive and open, and the key is for the U.S. side to meet us halfway. The two countries have been at loggerheads for years, especially since Trump launched a trade war with China during his first term. Last year, he hit China with the highest trade duties of his worldwide tariffs, setting a major trade imbalance with the country. Trump and Xi have temporarily trade truce last October that hit pause on the highest of the tariffs, but did not resolve any of the deeper underlying issues. The minister's speech set the overall tone for U.S.-China relations for the year, said George Chen of the consultancy The Asia Group, indicating a welcoming gesture from Beijing for Trump to come and visit. The Chinese side is prepared to talk, he said, adding that Beijing wants to be clear that China is ready to host Trump. Wang's comments also reflected a China that views itself on the ascendant. In his role it would defend the position of the United Nations, which is undergoing layoffs and reductions after the U.S. withdrew from multiple UN initiatives. Beijing is one of the 5 member nations of the UN Security Council that holds a permanent seat and veto power, and it has leveraged its position to build relationships while also filling a diplomatic void left by the U.S. since Trump's first term. The minister spoke about the Global Governance Initiative, a security initiative that China Xi first unveiled last September. Beijing now says that the initiative will center on the United Nations. The clearest signal from global governance initiatives is that the UN's leading role must be upheld and cannot be shaken. Its core role should be strengthened, not weakened.
You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Monday, March 9th. We read the Buffalo News live on weekday and Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. and rebroadcast at 4 p.m. For more information, call 716-821-5555. Your readers today have been
Ted by Jackie.
And I'm Ed Howard, and we thank you for listening.
Radio Reading mails out a large print program schedule to our listeners every other month. If you have not received a Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service large print program schedule in the mail, please call us at 716-821-5555. We will make sure that you receive one every other month. A Braille version of the schedule is also available upon request. Our number again is 716-821-5555. If you or people you know shop at any of the Dash's supermarkets, please save Dash's register tapes for Radio Reading. Our agency receives $2 for every $100 in Dash's register tapes. Radio Reading has raised thousands of dollars so far. Anyone can drop off their Dash's tapes to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, between William and Clinton Streets. Or Dash's tapes can be mailed to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, New York, 14227. Any questions on Dash's tapes for Radio Reading? Call us at 716-821-5555, and thanks for caring. for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability.